for today, students, is the spinal cord and the spinal nerves, and we will try to even cover the topic of the reflex section if possible. So the spinal cord is called also as the myelin, and it is a cord-like lower part of the central neural system. We have already covered that 98% weight of the central neural system is constituted by the brain. So spinal cord is quite small as well as a thin structure. It's a cord-like structure which is connected to the brain with the help of medulla oblongata, and it is situated inside the vertebral column. And then we need to understand one point, that there is a hole present which is present in the skull, which joins the lower portion of skull to the vertebral column, and that hole is called as the foramen magnum. So through this foramen magnum, the spinal cord is connected to the medulla oblongata of the brain. It is located in the vertebral column from the base to the medulla oblongata to the first or the second lumbar vertebra. If you remember in the bones topic, I just told you this much, that there are divisions of the vertebral column present. So in that division, that's why these numbers are given here. Vertebral column has these cervical and then thoracic, then lumbar, then sacral and coccygeal vertebral bones. So the spinal cord is present from the base of the medulla oblongata, and it goes up to the first or second lumbar. That means in the abdominal portion, it goes up to the first and the second, or otherwise the second lumbar vertebra. It is 45 centimeter long in the case of males and slightly smaller in the case of females. So its average weight is somewhere around 35 or 30 gram, and it is 2 to 2.5 centimeter wide. So it's quite lightweight when we compare it with the brain. The vertebral column and the meninges protect it. So we need to understand here that the choroidal plexus, which we talked about in the case of the brain, are absent in the case of the spinal cord. So there are no choroid plexus. That means whatever cerebrospinal fluid reaches the spinal cord, it reaches because of the brain. That's why brain is well connected. The brain's ventricles are well connected with the central canal, which is present in the case of the spinal cord. The external morphology of the spinal cord is like this. It is a long 40 to 45 centimeter long and 2 to 2.5 centimeter wide cord-like structure. It is dorso-ventrally slightly flattened. So if you recollect your 10th class diagram of the reflex arc, you must be remembering that we have learned about this diagram in the 10th class. It is slightly flat. It is slightly dorso-ventrally flat in nature. So this type of shape is called as the dorso-ventrally flattened shape. And then it stops growing by the age of 4 or 5 years. So this is the reason it is shorter than the backbone. Backbone is longer compared to the spinal cord, because spinal cord stops its growth at the around when a child is 4 to 5 years old. But we all know that the backbone continues to grow up to the adulthood. And then there are two swellings or swollen portions present in the spinal cord. One is in the shoulder region and second is the hip region. Or you can say in the cervical, from the fourth cervical to the first thoracic region, and the ninth thoracic to the 12th, 9th to 12th thoracic to the lumbar region. So these two swellings indicate that more input of the nerves from the shoulder, that means the arms, and the hip, that means the lower limbs. Spinal cord tapers towards the bottom, and it becomes a conical shape or triangular shape. This shape is called as the conus medullaris, and then the end of it looks like the horse tail. That's why it is called as the cauda equina. Cauda stands for the last part of the tail, and equina stands for equus. Equus is the scientific name for horse. So it looks like a horse tail, and its last tip is the filum terminale. So the spinal nerves run parallel and appear like horse tail. That's why they are called as the cauda equina. The cerebrospinal fluid in the central canal is continuous with that of the ventricles of the brain, and the cerebrospinal fluid in the subarachnoid space also is continuous with that of the brain. So these are the two main points we need to remember regarding the cerebrospinal fluid. Now when we talk about the internal structure of the spinal cord, it is dorso-ventrally flattened, and when we pay attention to the gray matter and white matter, it is exactly opposite of what is found in the brain, except in the posterior portion of the medulla oblongata. The rest of the brain carries the gray matter outside and the white matter inside, but in the case of the posterior portion of medulla oblongata as well as the spinal cord, the gray matter is towards the inside and white matter is towards the outside. So the gray matter appears to be like a butterfly shape or the H alphabet shape, and there is a small cavity present which runs throughout the length of the spinal cord, which is called as the central canal. This is the canal through which the ventricles is connected with the spinal cord, and it also carries the cerebrospinal fluid. Now there are various portions which are supposed to be learned. That when you look at the spinal cord, this side is the anterior side or the ventral side, and this side is the dorsal side or the posterior side. So when we talk about the spinal cord structure, this portion represents the back side of our, when we stand facing somebody, the back side is this part and the front side is this part. So there is a small depression present here which is called as the sulcus, but there is a deep fissure present here, and then these are the anterior funiculus, these are the white matter, lateral funiculus, posterior funiculus, and then this is the gray matter which carries the anterior column of the gray matter, posterior column of the gray matter, lateral column of the gray matter. So, and then there is a posterior portion which carries the septum.